Morning everyone. So we're on to George's Marvellous Medicine. Oh, I couldn't nearly say that. The Brown Hen. George stood in the farmyard looking up at the roof. The old farmhouse had a fine roof of pale red tiles and tall chimneys. There was no sign of Grandma. There was only a song thrush sitting on one of the chimney pots singing a song. The old Wurzels got stuck in the attic, thought George. Thank goodness for that. Suddenly, a tile came clattering down from the roof and fell into the yard. The song thrush took off fast and flew away. Then another tile came down, then half a dozen more, and then, very slowly, like some weird monster rising up from the deep, Grandma's head came through the roof. Then her scrawny neck and the tops of her shoulders. "How am I doing, boy?" she shouted. "How's that for a bash up?" "Don't you think you'd better stop now, Grandma?" George called out. "I have stopped," she answered. "I feel terrific." "Didn't I tell you I had magic powers? Didn't I warn you I had wizardry in my fingertips?" "But you wouldn't listen to me, would you? You wouldn't listen to your old Grandma. Oh, no. You didn't do it, Grandma," George shouted. "I did it. I made you new medicine." "A new medicine? You? Rubbish," she yelled. I did do it," George shouted. "You're lying as usual," Grandma yelled. "You're always lying. I am not lying, Grandma. I swear I'm not." The wrinkled old face high up on the roof stared down suspiciously at George. "Are you telling me you actually made a new medicine all by yourself?" she shouted. "Yes, Grandma, all by myself." "I don't believe you," she answered, "but I'm very comfortable up here. Fetch me that cup of tea." A brown hen was pecking about in the yard, close to where George was standing. The hen gave him an idea. Quickly he uncorked the medicine bottle and poured some of the brown stuff into the spoon. "Well, watch this then, Grandma," he shouted. He crouched down, holding out the spoon to the hen. "Chicken," he said. Chicken. Come here, have some of this." Chickens are stupid birds, and they're very, very greedy. They think everything is food. This one thought the spoon was full of corn. It hopped over, put its head on the side, and looked at the spoon. "Come on, chicken," George said. "Good chicken. Good chicken." The brown hen stretched out its neck towards the spoon and went peck. It got a beakful of medicine. The effect was electric. "Yow!" shrieked the hen, and it shot straight up into the air like a rocket. It went as high as the house, then came down again into the yard, splosh, and there it sat with its feathers all sticking straight out from its body. There was a look of amazement on its face. George stood watching it. Grandma up on the roof was watching it too. The hen got to its feet rather shakily. It was making funny gurgling noises in its throat. Its beak was opening and shutting. It seemed like a pretty sick hen. "You've done it, you stupid boy," Grandma shouted. "That hen's going to die. Your father will be after you right now. He'll give you socks and serves you right." All of a sudden, black smoke started pouring out of the hen's beak. "It's on fire!" yelled Grandma. "The hen's on fire!" George ran to the water trough to get a bucket of water. "That hen'll be roasted and ready for eating any moment," Grandma shouted. George sloshed the bucket of water over the hen. There was a sizzling, spitting noise, and smoke went away. "Old hen's laid its last egg," Grandma shouted. "Hens don't do any laying after they've been on fire." Now that the fire was out, the hen seemed better. It stood up properly. It flapped its wings, then it crouched down low to the ground, as though almost getting ready to jump. It did jump. It jumped high in the air, turned a complete somersault, and landed back on its feet. "It's a circus hen!" Grandma shouted from the roof. "A flippin' acrobat!" Now the hen began to grow. George had been waiting for this very thing to happen. "It's growing," he yelled. "It's growing, Grandma. Look, it's bigger." Bigger and bigger, taller and taller it grew. Soon the hen was 4 or 5 times its normal size. "Can you see it, Grandma?" George shouted. "I can see, boy, I can see it," the old girl shouted back. "I'm watching. I've got eyes." George was hopping about from one foot to the other with excitement. pointing at the enormous hen and shouting, "It's had the magic medicine, Grandma, and it's growing just like you did." But there was a difference between the way the hen was growing and the way Grandma grew. When Grandma grew taller and taller, she got thinner and thinner. The hen didn't. It stayed nice and plump. Soon it was taller than George, but it didn't stop there. Here go my dogs, 2 seconds. It went on growing until it was about as big as a horse. Then it stopped. "Doesn't it look marvellous, Grandma?" George shouted. "Not as tall as me," Grandma sang out. "Compared with me, that hen is titchy small. I am the tallest of them all." The next chapter: the pig, the bullocks, the sheep, the pony, and the nanny goat. Oh no. At that moment, George's mother came back from the shopping in the village. She drove her car into the yard and got out. She was carrying a bottle of milk in one hand and a bag of groceries in the other. The first thing she saw was the gigantic brown hen towering over little George. She dropped the bottle of milk. Then Grandma started shouting at her from the rooftop. And when she looked up and saw Grandma's head sticking up through the tiles, she dropped the bag of groceries. "How about that then, eh, Mary?" Grandma shouted. "I bet you've never seen a hen as big as that. That's George's giant hen, that is," stammered George's grandmother. "It's George's magic medicine," Grandma shouted. "We've both of us had it, the hen and I." "How in the world did you get up on the roof?" cried the mother. "I didn't," cackled the old woman. "My feet are still standing on the floor in the living room." This was too much for George's mother to understand. She just goggled and gaped, eyes wide. She looked as though she might be about to faint. A second later, George's father appeared. His name was Mr. Killy Cranky. Mr. Cranky was a small man with bandy legs and a huge head. He was a kind father to George, but he was not an easy person to live with because even the smallest things got him all worked up and very excited. The hen standing in the yard was certainly not a small thing. And when Mr. Cranky saw it, he started jumping about as though something was burning his feet. "Great heavens!" he cried, waving his arms. "What is this? What's happened? Where did it come from? It's a giant hen. Who did it?" "I did," George said. "Look at me!" Grandma shouted from the rooftop. "Never mind about the hen. What about me?" Mr. Cranky looked up and saw Grandma. "Shut up, Grandma," he said. It didn't seem to surprise him that the old girl was sticking up through the roof. It was the hen that excited him. He had never seen anything like it. But then, who had? "It's fantastic!" Mr. Cranky shouted, dancing around. "It's colossal! Gigantic! It's tremendous! A miracle! How did you do it, George?" George started telling his father about the magic medicine. While he was doing this, the big brown hen sat down in the middle of the yard and went cluck, 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 cluck. Everyone stared at it. When it stood up again, there was a brown egg lying there. The egg, the size of a football. "That egg would make scrambled eggs for 20 people, Mrs. Cranky said. "George," Mr. Cranky shouted, "how much of this medicine have you got?" "Lots," George said. "There's a big saucepan full of it in the kitchen, and this bottle here's nearly full." "Come with me," Mr. Cranky yelled, grabbing George by the arm. "Bring the medicine. For years and years I've been trying to breed bigger and bigger animals. Bigger bulls for beef, bigger pigs for pork, bigger sheep for mutton." They went to the pigsty first. George gave a spoonful of medicine to the pig. The pig blew smoke from its nose and jumped about all over the place. Then it grew and grew. They went to the herd of the fine black bullocks that Mr. Cranky was trying to fatten for the market. George gave each of them some medicine, and this is what happened. Then the sheep. You see? He gave some to his pony, grey pony, Jack Frost. And finally, just for fun, he gave some to Alma, the nanny goat. Oh dear. A crane for Grandma. Grandma, from high up on the rooftop, could see everything that was going on, and she didn't like what she was. what she saw. She wanted to be the centre of attention, and nobody was taking the slightest notice of her. George and Mr. Cranky were running around and getting excited about the enormous animals appearing in front of them. Mrs. Cranky was washing up in the kitchen, and Grandma was all alone on the rooftop. "Hey, you! George! Get me a cup of tea this minute, you idle little beast!" "Don't listen to the old goat," Mr. Cranky said. "She's stuck up where she is, and a good thing too." "But we can't leave her up there all day, Dad," George said. "What if it rains?" "George!" yelled Grandma. "Oh, you horrible little boy, you disgusting little worm. Fetch me a cup of tea at once and a slice of a currant bun." "We'll have to get her out, Dad," George said. "She won't give us any peace if we don't." Mrs. Cranky came outside and she agreed with George. "She's my own mother," she said. "She's a pain in the neck," Mr. Cranky said. "I don't care," Mrs. Cranky said. "I'm not leaving my own mother sticking up through the roof for the rest of her life." So in the end, Mr. Cranky telephoned the crane company and asked them to send their biggest crane out to the house at once. The crane arrived an hour later. It was on wheels and there were 2 men inside it. The crane men climbed up onto the roof and put ropes around Grandma's arms. Then she was lifted right up through the roof. In a way, the medicine had done Grandma good. It had not made her any less grumpy or bad-tempered, but it seemed to have cured all of her aches and pains, and she was suddenly as frisky as a ferret. As soon as the crane had lowered her to the ground, she ran over to George's huge pony, Jack Frost, jumped onto its back. The ancient old hag, who was now as tall as a house, galloped about the farm on a gigantic pony, jumping over trees and sheds and shouting, "Out of my way! Clear the decks! Stand back, all you miserable midgets, or I'll trample you to death!" and other silly things like that. But because Grandma was now too tall to get back into the house, she had to sleep that night in the hay barn with the mice and the rats. And that's where I'm going to leave it today, and we will pick it up tomorrow with Mr. Cranky's great idea. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.